I think at this point, everybody has pretty much heard about Season 3's launch being really poorly received. And as a recap, it's because even though there were some nerfs to the really high-powered characters that have been dominant in tournaments, like Asuka and Ana, there were some buffs to other characters, and they added new tools that felt like they repeated the mistakes of Season 2. So there was generally this kind of idea that Tekken is not going to be fixed. So it was a big surprise when we read the patch notes for 3.0.02, which is an incremental patch. And we weren't even sure if there were going to be balance changes. They said in an earlier announcement that they were going to be balance changes here, but in a tweet that was talking about it, there was no mention of it. So even leading up to the patch dropping, we weren't sure if there were going to be balance changes at all. It was even more surprising to go through the notes and see that they've nerfed almost every character. It was a bit shocking that some characters went untouched, but yeah, nerfs across the board. Here's some quick highlights of what they did. They basically nerfed heat almost in so many pretty precise ways. So a lot of high-powered moves that would consume heat gauge now cost more. Specifically, they've created situations where when you use a heat burst, you only get 2/3 of your gauge. Well, a lot of heat moves now cost exactly 2/3 of your gauge. So when you go into heat using burst rather than using a full-on heat engager, you lose your entire gauge, right? It's a pretty significant change because a lot of these characters had access to moves like this where they could, use heat moves multiple times. I was playing Devil Jin leading up to this patch, and his heat hell sweep was usable multiple times. And now it's one of those 2/3 gauge costing moves, just as an example. The big change overall is across the board. They've looked at heat dash launchers and deleted so many of them. I'll show you Asuka because she kind of has a lot of other changes relevant to the patch too. Her sidestep 2 used to heat dash launch, and now it's only a knockdown for a single follow-up. And the theme across the cast too, Elisa got nerfed in a similar way. Her homing high chainsaw also no longer heat dash launches. So the understanding I have is that if the moves were fast, had high coverage or like utility, like Asuka's evasive move here, or Fang's back Kenpo 2 also is no longer a heat dash launcher. Moves with extra power outside of just being like an approaching mid, no longer heat dash launch. And stance moves, a lot of stance moves have lost their heat dash launch property. Now that's not across the board, and that's part of the question marks I'll mention later, but let me talk more about some of the other good changes, I think. Heat auto parry stances can now be throw punished. So if I have Heihachi go into Fujin's stance while he's in heat, right? He auto parries me, right? A bunch of characters have this type of mechanic. But if I grab him now, I get a guaranteed throw. He can't break this throw. So they've taken a look at a lot of heat-specific problem situations and moves and toned down not only their oppressiveness, but also how much heat they cost. By the way, Asuka's running moves no longer launch on normal hit. They hit Claudio's Shoryuken also. And Hwoarang's flappy kicks on counter hit are gone in heat. It is a shocking amount of nerfs that, to be honest, are pretty long overdue. These are the kinds of changes that we would have expected at the end of Season 1. But the fact that they're making these nerfs in general just makes it even more confusing about what to expect from these developers, because these are all really good changes. And there's already discourse of people complaining that their mains got nerfed, and I categorically reject that. I think that it should be clear by now that the weakening of these types of oppressive and high reward mechanics make the game more fun for everybody that is not playing that character, right? It's a two-player game. So yeah, there are a few question marks. Before I start talking about this, it's inevitable that people are going to feel targeted, that I'm addressing their character directly. But it's important to understand that, again, it's a two-player game, and the strengths and weaknesses of a character are what make the game interesting for both parties. The weaknesses of a character provide content for the defender, right? And learning to navigate around those weaknesses as the attacker is also like higher level content, right? So something confusing to me is Lydia's Horse 2 is still a heat dash launcher, and it's still guaranteed in a lot of situations. Like QCF4 here is a huge homing high, and this still heat dash launches and is guaranteed. The one they nerfed on Lydia was Cat Stance 3. This is no longer heat dash launch, and the idea is if you counter hit down forward 2, this was guaranteed. So no longer heat dash launching is definitely a good thing, but Lydia has had this forever, and that's still concerning to me. So maybe in the late May patch, we can expect nerfs to that, hopefully. King lost his muscle flex, muscle armor into the follow-up. That no longer heat dash launches, which is a good thing again. But his Jaguar sprint is largely untouched. He can still run at you and like force a mix-up off of wake-up situations. They didn't even touch like how that interacts with the heat system at all. So it's a little shocking. And then in the patch notes, Shaheen was entirely missing. He's not there at all. Victor lost his heat dash launch off of his Perfumer 3, but again, mostly untouched. He keeps his really good new moves. And the whiffed heat smash wall splats are still in the game. There's a few question marks about why they haven't touched some things, but this entire patch on the whole is straight up good. Long overdue, but it's a good patch. I have to wonder if they saw what Guilty Gear Strive was doing with making a really well-received nerf patch and then kind of executing that vision and being well-received. But I also kind of doubt it because I don't know if these teams are agile enough to respond to like the market conditions like that and quickly adjust. So who knows? But I wanted to highlight this too. This is Lily, one of my mains. And, you know, I, again, am fully in favor of these nerfs. Lily's Feisty Rabbit 3 now is so much weaker than it was before, right? It uses her 2/3 of her gauge. This is one of those moves affected by the increased heat consumption nerf, right? So if you heat engage and you get a full bar, she gets at least 2 uses of these, right? But if you heat burst, you now lose the entire gauge doing one of these mix-ups. So I missed the follow-up. I haven't played this character in forever. That's a indirect nerf to heat burst as well. This is super in touch with the concerns the kind of serious player base have been having for a while. I do find that pretty cool. If you want to see all of the changes, I cover them in my second channel where we do like a full read-through. You can see my first reaction to it. I'll link it below. But I'm genuinely surprised by the good changes here. Anna also losing heat dash launchers and losing rocket damage. Nina losing gun damage in heat is an interesting one to me. And I want to say something that's going to come across as possibly problematic, but I think it's important to be honest about my opinion here. Let me start by saying that in the world we live in now, nerfs across the board are unquestionably what we need, okay? Unquestionably, Tekken 8 needs nerfs across the board. We need to keep going with nerfs. It's very important, okay? Important disclaimer there. In an ideal world, with a really good development team that is really sharp and really in touch with all facets of the community and can execute on their vision, I like the idea of games having some dumb stuff, okay? The flappy kicks from Hwoarang are gone. There was a lot of dopamine from hitting this. It was stupid. It had to go, okay? In the current version of the game, in the current climate of the game, it had to go. But it was really fun being Hwoarang and hitting this. You know, I'm surprised, for example, that they didn't hit the heat consumption of it, right? I'm surprised they didn't hit the heat consumption. Again, in this world of Tekken 8, it's important they nerfed this. It's very important they nerfed this. But a lot of games can be fun when some characters are really strong in some areas and have huge weaknesses in other areas. I would have rather that they nerfed Hwoarang's homing low that starts his offense for free. Right? Because the fact that he could start offense for free is why you would want to attack him to stop him in the first place, where he gets access to this. So in my mind, there is a world where this could still exist. It's still wall splats, by the way, which is pretty crazy. But not this world, right? So I'm fine that they nerfed it. I support that they nerfed it. In my dream world, there's room for this to exist. But not in this version of Tekken with this development team in the current climate. It cannot exist. But I wish. And same thing too with Nina's gun nerf. It had to go. Nina is ridiculously strong in that particular area of the game where she gets a 13 frame punish while standing and blasts your life bar to death. But I feel like in a really well-designed game, there's room for really dumb changes. She used to do like way more damage than that. So right now where like the brand integrity of Tekken is at risk, having healthy nerfs is absolutely the move, right? This is the correct decision. But if you're like an indie fighting game maker or something, you know, I think it's important to embrace that some characters should be able to do stupid things if there are important compensation weaknesses, okay? That's my opinion on that. And I'm not expecting everyone to agree with that. I'm a Super Smash Bros. Melee player, right? So I like the idea of sometimes there's a select group of top tier characters that are really good at what they do, but there's a lot of cool counterplay and they all interact together in cool ways as well. So this version of Tekken, everything needed to be nerfed. Every character still needs to be nerfed, but this is absolutely nice. A couple more changes that I think I should highlight. These are going to be the talk of the town, so maybe you've seen them already. But Law's nunchucks no longer launch on normal hit. They still regen heat, which is a little crazy if you ask me, and they still counter hit launch. But the normal hit launch is gone. On top of that, his DSS parry now costs heat. It used to regenerate heat. Now it spends a third of his bar. This is a huge change, and the same thing applies to when he does this parry manually with the 2-throw input. It spends heat. This is a colossal change because he used to do stance pressure with DSS and automatically counter you if you retaliated, and now you're in the same situation again. The fact that it actually costs heat while, taking some HP is pretty big. But it raises some questions for me about what direction they want to take heat regeneration, because on one hand you have the spending a meter to pull off a parry, but if he lands a slide, for example, and gets this flip over with the nunchucks, he gets to keep the same amount of heat effectively. Yeah, he gets a little regeneration, but after the spacing out situation, it's basically a net zero. Do they want you to regenerate heat and continue oppressive offense? This feels like the type of change that's very one-sided and leads to looping mix-ups, which they've said in the past that they want to reduce. They've pulled off that reduction by, for example, nerfing this auto parry. But if they're going to allow heat regeneration on a successful mix-up, I don't feel like they're going far enough. And maybe this means they're afraid to nerf a character too much. Maybe that affects player retention or things like that. But I simultaneously see progress in the nerfing of a heat auto parry, while also being concerned that the heat regeneration remains on a successful mix-up. That doesn't really sit well with me. I'm curious what their overall vision is going to be for this type of design. Anyways, it was a bit of a tangent. I was talking about how they nerfed the normal hit launch on the nunchucks, and I picked Claudio because they did the same type of change for him. He no longer normal hit launches with his Shoryuken. This is so big. This is so wild. And let's go back to Law real quick. His 1-1-1 in Heat no longer Heat Dash launches either. This has been in the game for 2 years too long. So I have to give props that they did this. Yes, it's a bit overdue, but this is what people have wanted. As much as the development team is not in the good graces of the larger online fan base and dedicated community at this time, I think credit is due. These are the types of patches we want. This is a good patch. If this patch dropped when Season 3 was launched, I think the reception to Season 3 would have been completely different. I am a little annoyed that it's hard to have any kind of stable opinion on this game. Like, do I have hope for it to succeed, for it to bounce back? There's still a lot of work to be done. But this is for sure a good patch. This is a straight up good patch. I am shocked that after what Season 3.0 was, that we got a good patch. I'm very shocked by that. This no longer Heat Dash launches. I don't know how they do it. But for whatever reason, we're on the hook again. We're on the hook again, I guess. The big takeaway for this patch, I think, is that the majority of changes, if not every change, is actually pretty good. And it's the first time in a while that the Tekken dev team seems to have moved with a clear vision, a direct focus, and kind of in lockstep. Maybe the bar is a little low, but since Season 2's launch, it's been rare to get a patch that feels like everything is going in the same direction. It's usually 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward, and why did this character get buffed? That's not to say this patch is perfect. I do have complaints. I think that some characters were probably not touched enough or still have outstanding problems from Season 2's launch. Again, I'm thinking of Horong's homing low, or Lydia getting guaranteed follow-ups from her homing high, or Victor having the running low. There are still many problems for sure, and it is a bit shocking to see some of the most stance-heavy offensive characters remain untouched. But we really didn't expect any nerfs this patch. In fact, we didn't expect any balance changes at all after the tweet that came out. So I hate to be the type of dude that's on the hook again, but in version 3.01, when they release Kunimitsu, are they going to nerf the super problem characters like the Lydias and the Victors that are kind of the, I think, epitome of Tekken 8 design right now? Is this incremental approach going to be the direction going forward? I don't have the answers to any of this, but definitively this patch is good. The questions are like, is it too little too late? Will they continue to keep moving in this good direction? I don't know, but I look forward to more patches like this. I was anticipating that this patch wouldn't be good and that I would make a channel update video after this. But I guess we'll do the channel update now. I still have an interest in educating about this game. When the pro players are doing Tekken things and it's very visible, I get excited still. It happens less and less as they power up the Season 2 designs and the Tekken 8 Heat designs, but as we just saw, they've nerfed a lot of those. So we are likely to see a lot more Tekken happening. Joey Fury said in the Heatspeak podcast, underneath what he said, the garbage heap, you can still see Tekken. And that's what I'm interested in educating. So I'll still be covering tournaments. I'll still be covering pro matches. There are tutorials I'm interested in making, but we'll have to see since the system is continuing to change a lot. Aside from that, though, we are doing a lot more variety stuff. So if you're not subscribed to FeedEX Unhinged, we've been visiting Dark Souls 1. That's the latest thing happening. And we'll be exploring a lot more FromSoft games and other things that make me angry and make me scared, because that's what the FeedEX Unhinged audience really likes. In any case, this is a good Tekken update. There's more work to be done, but they found a way to do it. I'm on the hook again. I can't believe it. Here's hoping to a good pro Tekken World Tour season. Here's hoping to a season that's fun for the online community to play. Yeah, and I mean, I'll probably talk about ranked inflation in a separate video. There's a lot going on there and a lot of opinions going around that I want to address. But for now, this patch is pretty good. The matchmaking is pretty good. If you were to come back to Tekken now, you're going to be in combos less. You're going to be able to find matches more quickly. And those were kind of my big priority points. So this patch is probably going to do it for me. I'll have to test it out. But a lot of intermediate and high level players I interact with are pretty happy with it. So we'll see how the fan base responds, but it's a good patch. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.